Hi everyone! So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to shoot with a 4x5 camera. So once you find your subject, you need to set up your tripod. So first, of course, you want to extend the legs. Get them all nice and even. Now, we're just doing the pre-setup. You're going to be framing up your subject in a minute with more detail. Now, when you do find your subject, you do want to make sure that one of those tripod legs is pointing towards your subject and that the angle gauge on the tripod head is also pointing towards your subject. This is so that all of the handles and such are going to be available to you while you're behind the camera. So now we need to get the quick release plate onto the camera. So first we need to get it off the tripod. You're going to go ahead and move this lever over here to release it. There we go. And now the quick release plate is accessible. We want to make sure that both of these knobs are flush against each other. So go ahead and turn the large knob until it is completely flush against the smaller knob. Now you're going to screw the plate onto the bottom of the camera. Now you want to make sure that the area that says lens with the arrow is pointing towards the lens. See that right there. All right, so once you've done that, first you're going to tighten the small knob, and then once you get that nice and tight, then you tighten the gray knob. Make sure the locking lever for the quick release plate is open before you pick up the camera. And then we're gonna go ahead and pick up the camera and place it on there. Make sure you get the sides under there first, and then it's going to actually click on. And you can see there that it is holding it down. And make sure that it's nice and stable. Okay, we don't want our cameras falling down. Next, we need to zero out the front and rear standards. So we need to make sure that the this top piece here is up to this line on here. So you do that by just loosening with the knobs and then pulling them up. All right, we also need to make sure that the swings are zeroed out so they're right in the middle. So again, you just twist the knob to loosen and then tighten it down. And then we need to make sure that this is in the middle as well and it's not turned at all. Now these are all controls you can use when you're shooting, but for now, we want to get them nice and in the middle. Okay, so while you're getting these centered, you will feel that they kind of snap into the center in a way. And that helps you know that they're nice and in the center. It's something you kind of got to do to actually understand. You'll get it when you get to this part. All right, so once you get all of these different areas zeroed out, make sure you do the same with the rear standard. While standing behind the camera, you're going to go ahead and use the knobs over here to separate the standards. So the left knobs loosen each standard. So go ahead and loosen those. And then with the right knobs, you can actually move the standards. So we're moving the front standard forward and then locking it down. And then we're going to move the rear standard backwards. Now you don't need to worry about locking this one down quite yet because we're gonna focus in a moment. Next, we want to open the shutter by pushing this black lever up. And then you wanna open up the aperture as wide as possible by moving the white lever. In the box, you're gonna find a black cloth and a loop. So grab the black cloth out of the box. And grab the loop. Okay, now you're gonna go and get behind the camera, and the cloth is to help block out all the light so you can actually see what you're focusing on. So once you get back here, you're gonna notice that everything is upside down. So at first it's a little disconcerting, but you'll start to learn how to see this way. Now, in order to get in focus, we need to use the loop on the ground glass. So you put it right on here, and then you go ahead and use the knob to move back and forth until your image is nice and in focus. So at this point, you can go ahead and recompose your shot. Get the right angle that you want, get as close or as far away as you need to. And this is where playing with the tilts and the shifts and all that comes in handy. Is one of the great things about working with 4x5. At this point, once you get it recomposed, you're going to refocus and then make sure you lock that rear standard so it doesn't move. Once you're ready to take your shot, you need to make sure you close the shutter by pushing this lever down. This is one of the things that people forget to do most often. And if you have that open when you first take the slide out for your film, then you're not gonna get a good exposure. Your film's gonna be completely overexposed. So make sure you check that you have closed the shutter. Now we need to figure out our exposure, and we're gonna do this by using a spot meter and a gray card. Okay, so first you need to place the gray card in front of your subject, and you want to make sure it's in the same light as your subject. So now we need to set our meter to the same ISO of the film we're using. So to do that, we're going to come over here to our spot meter, and where it says ASA is actually another term for ISO. So we're going to use these little metal pegs, these little silver pegs, to turn it until that number where it says ASA is the same as our film, and in this case it's 125. So looking through the eyepiece, you're gonna see that there's this spot, and you wanna make sure that spot is on the gray card. You're gonna push the black button, and you're gonna see that the needle moves. So make a mental note of what number that needle is actually pointing to. In this case, it's 8 1/3. Make sure that you're pushing the black button, not the gray button. The gray button actually helps you check to see if the battery is working. But for metering, we need to make sure we are hitting the black button. So now we're gonna use this outer dial to have that arrow on the bottom point to the number we saw inside. And in this case, it's 8 1/3. Okay, so now that we have it set to 8 1/3, all of our possible exposure combinations are listed up here at the top. So now this is where your creative choices come in. Do you want a slow shutter speed to show the motion? Do you want a fast shutter speed to freeze the motion? Do you want to use a large aperture to have a shallow depth of field? Or do you want a small aperture to have a deep depth of field? For this demonstration, we're going to go with f11 at 1/4 of a second. First, let's go ahead and set our aperture by moving the white lever over to f11. Next, we're going to use this outer dial to move and set our shutter speed to 1/4 of a second. Now, you're gonna notice that it has just a 4, so remember that it is a fraction. That's 1/4 of a second. Grab the shutter release cable from the box, and you want to screw it in right here above the shutter release. Okay, so now that it's screwed in, we want to make sure that it's all working correctly. So we're going to go ahead and push this a few times, and we want to cock the shutter using that small piece, push it again, and you'll notice that every time we do it, the shutter is opening up. So when you're composing, you may decide that you want to shoot vertically or horizontally. So to change this from a vertical to a horizontal position, you're going to lift this lever and then just swivel it around. And then make sure that you lock that lever back down. So go ahead and grab the holder from out of your Ziploc bag It's all nice and dust-free still. Woohoo! Now go ahead and pull the ground glass towards you gently and slip the holder in. And you want to make sure you get it in all the way. Okay, so right now it's not quite in there all the way. Ah, there we go. Now it is all the way in there. So make sure that your shutter is closed by checking that the black lever is in the down position. Then you're gonna go ahead and cock the shutter. And now we're ready to remove the slide. Now the slide we're removing is gonna be the one that is furthest away from you or closest to the lens. Move the little lock out of the way and then move the slide out. Okay, we're ready to take our picture. Now at this point, you wanna go ahead and wait a few seconds so that the camera stops vibrating from pulling the slide out, and go ahead and take the photo. Now, if you're shooting vertically, you wanna make sure that when you take the slide out, that you use the slide to actually block the top, because a little bit of light could get in there, especially on a bright sunny day. Now go ahead and take your photo. All right, now when you put the slide back in, you want to instead have the smooth side facing out. And you'll notice that in some cases, well, in every case, it's gonna be the black side is facing out. So we know that that is the side of the holder that has been exposed. Once you get the slide in, you wanna make sure that you also use the lock to lock it back down. Now at this point, you're gonna take out the film holder, refocus, and then take the same shot with the other piece of film. We do this because there's so many little things that can go wrong when you're shooting. It's good to just take an extra shot, so all of that time that you put into figuring out what your shot is isn't wasted because maybe you forgot to shut the shutter or something like that. So once we've finished taking both shots, and we know this because both of the slides are black now, both of the sides have been exposed, we're gonna go ahead and put it back in the bag. And now we are ready to get it back to the lab and develop.